Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the webinar on psychology of leadership, maximizing Belbin and MBTI. Good evening to you. This is Pearl D'Souza. I'm the director at PrePearl Training Development. PrePearl, of course, is the Belbin regional representative for India. We specialize in behavioral change management. Our forte does lie on maximizing potential, whether it is at the individual level, the team level, or the organization level. We have been leveraging Belbin, of course, for over 14 years. And the whole aspect of behavioral change definitely is something that excites all of us in the team over here. Today, we are extremely happy to have you join us. To all of the participants who joined us last month also for the webinar, welcome back. It was great to see you registering. And to those who have joined us for the first time today, hello, a hearty welcome. We are looking forward to this evening. We're looking forward to the dialogue. We are also excited because we are going to be joined today by, of course, Leslie D'Souza. Leslie is our CMD at PrePearl Training. He is a behavioral coach to senior leaders, consulted with organizations in India and abroad. He is a behavioral change expert and has worked very closely with Dr. Robert Blake, the founder of the Leadership Grid. He is on the product development team of Grid International. He did his MBTI certification with Roger Pearman in Baltimore in 1998. And Roger Pearman is, of course, the author of Hardwired Leadership. Leslie does use the tools, uses the Grid, the MBTI, the Belbin in his coaching, and today's discussion is really tapping into how do we use these tools for leadership development. Leslie, of course, also was the first to bring in the Belbin accreditation course to India and is the accreditation course facilitator. Well, what are we going to be doing today? The webinar outline. We will be looking at aspects of leadership development. We will look at then an overview of the Belbin and MBTI. We do understand that many of us would already know about the tools, but a quick overview about the two tools. How do these tools strengthen the leadership and development journey? And of course, dialoguing with Leslie, particularly when we're looking at leadership coaching. So definitely looking forward to the dialogue today. When we look at leadership and the evolution of leadership, you will realize that today the move has been from the leader who focuses on power over someone or someone who knows it all, to today really power through the teams, really looking at knowing that the true potential lies within each team member, and therefore the know-it-all, the one great leader kind of moves out, and what you have over here is really looking at how do we maximize the potential within the team. And this then requires, of course, how am I being able to motivate my team for a positive and distinctive self-concept among my team members? And this, the self is really defined in terms of the social identity. Do the team members feel that they are contributing to a goal and a purpose of the group? Is there this whole concept of feeling included? Feeling that I am part of the team. And therefore this shift in leadership towards really the leader being seen as one of us, the leader being seen as someone who is approachable and not necessarily the person who knows it all and who's up there on a pedestal. And that's the evolution and that's the change that we're beginning to see today. Positive psychology of leadership is making a remarkable difference at the workplace, and the importance of celebrating positive emotions is really becoming very imperative. Martin Seligman, of course, says that We look at the past with gratitude and forgiveness, and we look at the present with mindfulness and savoring. We look at the future with hope and optimism. Today, the tools that we are going to be talking about are really very strong aids to build positive emotions that is really needed to be a transformational leader. So when leaders are really looking not only at change, but looking at transformation, how can these tools help them understand themselves and others? And therefore, we will look at the framework of looking at leadership from the perspective of leading self and leading others. What can this give us in terms of insight for me as a leader, and also as an individual who is in charge of probably the leadership development process or the leadership development journey in my organization? A quick overview of the tools, and we will get into the MBTI to start off with. The MBTI, of course, Myers and Briggs really worked on the work that was done by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung proposed that the world is made up of polarities, and there is a range of polarities. For example, night and day, foreground, background, male, female. Even in the metaphysical space or realm, good, bad, heaven, hell, life, death, and also therefore within the human psyche, the whole concept of consciousness, unconsciousness. And then Jung also talks about the whole aspects of extroversion, introversion. Therefore, in order to better understand self and others, we can actually look at, number one, what is the direction we focus our attention and energy? Where do we get our energy from? The way we take in information, the way we make decisions, and the way we relate to the outer world. These are the mental processes that really help us understand people better. To start off with, the direction we focus our attention and energy. Do we have a preference for extroversion or introversion? I quite like this little graphic, this drawing over here that says, you know, after a really tiring day, what is it that you do to recharge you? If you're an extrovert, you may not really enjoy staying in, but really would enjoy going out, and that's the way you recharge, by meeting others. But on the other hand, if you have a preference for introversion, the way you recharge would really be taking some time out and being by yourself. And both are good. One isn't better than the other. It's just that both are different. And it's important to see this difference. The way we take in information. How do we take in information? Are you someone who takes in information that is real, that's tangible? You use your senses, you use the data points, or are you someone who really focuses on the relationship and the connection between facts? What are the possibilities? What can this mean? And therefore, that's really looking at a preference for sensing or intuition. Thirdly, another mental process is, how do we make decisions? There are some individuals who have a natural preference to make conclusions based on logical analysis, really looking at what is fair to everybody in this situation. And then there are individuals who have the preference to mentally place themselves into the situation, to identify with each and every person, to be really empathetic and say, what is fair to each person? How am I really relating to their needs? Again, two different ways. And you realize that when you therefore look at these polarities together, when you understand them, that's when you begin to see things holistically. And that's why it's important to therefore understand this about ourselves and understand it about people. And finally, the way we act in the outer world. Do we have a preference for judging, or do we have a preference for perceiving? Are you someone who likes to live in a planned, orderly way? wherein you know what you're going to be doing the next 2 hours. You have your to-do list ready and got them ready to tick it off. Or are you someone who likes to live in a flexible, spontaneous way, where there should always be a plan B, and you never know, you may just get the best ideas towards the end. So it's always good to kind of keep the door open. Two different ways of looking at things. And therefore, when you look at these different mental processes and when you put them together, you really get the MBTI legend, and you get the 16 personality types, the 16 personality preferences. And of course, we're going to talk a little more in terms of how this helps us as individuals, and how importantly, types, in fact, give us such a deep understanding of how our mind works. What is the habit of the mind? And not necessarily put us in a box to say, you know, this is the way all people who belong to the ISTG framework are like this way. Yeah. What's interesting is the MBTI helps us with what is really happening within the mental functions, okay? And our personality is a very important bit that influences our behavior. It is important, therefore, to see personality influences our behavior, to also see then what is the effect of this behavior on others. How does it impact others? And our behavior is influenced, number one, by personality, but also by other important aspects such as our mental abilities, our values and our motivations, our experiences, external influences, and role learning. This is where the Belbin comes in. The Belbin is, of course, one, just checking to see whether, apologies, I think there was a little update that came on my screen. Okay, this is where the Belbin comes in. And the Belbin helps us really understand how is my behavior affecting the other? What is the contribution that I'm bringing onto the table? How do I contribute within a team, or how do I contribute as a leader? Belbin, of course, the team role categories are action, social, and thinking roles. Within the action roles, you have shaper, implementer, and completer finisher. And characteristics of the shaper: someone who's really hard driving, an implementer great at organizing things, a completer finisher really focused on the details, constantly looking at perfection. The social roles: a coordinator is a team role that is great at spotting talent. The team worker, someone who's very empathetic, diplomatic in a positive sense, and a resource investigator who is great at networking, very outgoing. And then you have the thinking roles: the plant, the specialist, and the monitor evaluator. Ideas factory is another word for the plant. Very knowledgeable, deep knowledge area, possibly a narrow field, that's the specialist, and a very objective contribution, great at strategy, is the monitor evaluator. Now, these are the 9 different team roles that we have. And it's interesting to see that, well, all of us play the 19 roles, but to look at what does our profile look like. And an individual could have a combination of any of these 9 team roles. When you're looking at your profile, you will look at, there are about 3 team roles that would be your preferred roles. These are team roles that you should ideally develop. Use this to really maximize your strengths and plan your career accordingly. The next 3 roles are manageable roles. You can manage playing them, and in some cases, it may even be possible to develop these team roles. And the final, last, the least preferred roles. These are the contributions that you're better off to kind of avoid, best to delegate to them, or to try and look at who else in your team you can work closely with, who can really complement you. And really, this is the secret to collaboration. So important for leaders to understand and to know that. So with that, what we've looked at is, when you're looking at enhancing leadership, We're looking at the self, and we're looking at leading others. We're looking at how does the MBTI and how does the Belbin team roles assist us in the leadership development journey. We are now going to get into a dialogue with Leslie. To just let you know also, there is the chat screen on your screens. Please do use it to send in your comments and questions. We now have, I am now going to be joined by Leslie. Hi Leslie, we're going to try and switch on the camera so you can see both of us.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, and it's great. It's great to be here. It's our first webinar also with both of us together, so it's a special one.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off, of course, by asking Leslie. When we're talking about leadership, and we say leading self and leading others, what do you mean by leading self? What does leading self really mean?
Well, Paul, when I think of leading self, I look at this whole aspect of every individual taking charge of his own destiny. What really is important is that I, as an individual, have a clear understanding that I'm placed here on planet Earth with a purpose. It's sort of a purpose to complete the unfinished plan of the person who's placed me here on Earth. And mind you, I do believe that I am gifted, and so do I believe that every other person is gifted with what's necessary to be able to fulfill that purpose. That what gives me meaning in life, and that what's really creating a destiny. And so as a leader, when I talk about leading self, I'm also concerned about helping my people develop a self-concept wherein they can lead self themselves. And in this context, to be able to have a good, clear understanding of who I am, why I am what I am, I need some assistance. It's tough to do it by myself. And so I found the MBTI, I found the Belbin team roles as extremely valuable tools that gives me insight and has helped me in the coaching process to get insights for the participants, the coaches to get insights into themselves, into their self-concept, into who they are. And in fact, find a meaning in life through that.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking of when I did my MBTI and Belbin. I think I remember the whole aspect of self-concept, and I remember really the aspect of realizing why when you get stressed. So the MBTI also helps you figure out when you get stressed and why do you get stressed, the way you get stressed.
Absolutely.
And that really helped me get an understanding of why do I behave the way I do. And also, secondly, I think when we did the Belbin too, my self-concept changed a little bit when I realized that people who I was working closely with were seeing certain strengths in me, which I didn't really realize, which I didn't really take. Maybe I've taken it for granted.
And that's the whole beautiful part of this, this whole process of discovery, all right? And and unless I'm able to discover myself, unless I'm able to discover my uniqueness, all right, I may sort of take myself for granted or may under-evaluate myself. So if you look at MBTI per se, we have a preference. Like in my case, I have a preference for the ENFJ preference, right? And so I get to know really what my strengths are, right? As a person, how I add value at the workplace, right? My whole ability to be able to connect with people, to empathize, my focus actually is on on people. My focus is on growth. That's part of my natural MBTI profile. Now, there's a very interesting dynamic of the MBTI profile where you have a dominant function, an auxiliary, a tertiary, and an inferior function. You know, and so whilst feeling, an extroverted feeling is my dominant function, my least preferred function is thinking. All right, which really means that I possibly am not too objective or analytical. All right, and now the interesting part is when I get stressed, I could tend to overuse my least preferred style, my least preferred function of thinking, which really means I can overanalyze, I can almost get paralyzed.
Yeah, and that's not really helping.
And that's really not helping, you know.
It's really, I think the whole the psychology itself is just so interesting.
Absolutely.
Human behavior.
And the whole purpose is to understand that each one of us is so different, and so I can value the difference in someone else. Okay.
And I think in that point, take to the point on valuing the difference in someone else. And I think that's an important part also of leading others.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because leading others also is looking at how do we help individuals work in a particular, or aligning to a common goal. And particularly the MBTI and Belbin, these two tools, how do you see those two tools helping with this fit?
Actually, you see, Pearl, we spoke a lot about the MBTI. On the Belbin front, now that's very interesting as well for me to discover myself as a leader, all right? Because the profiling that comes out is based not only on my self-perception, but it's also based on the observer input. So I sort of get a 360-degree feedback. And as you shared a little earlier, I get a feel for what are my 3 preferred ways of making a contribution.
Right.
And what really happens is that when I am working and making contributions within a team context, I feel excited. My engagement levels go up. The best in me really comes out. And so as a leader, if I'm able to identify this in my people, and very interestingly, if I can even, let's say, assign tasks around these preferred roles, you can really find people then excelling. So it's about a balance that we can create in the context of a team.
Right. So what we're really saying, therefore, is one is understanding my strengths, understanding what I'm good at. But both these tools also helping me understand the other. And I think and understanding what kind of tasks I can assign as a leader to others, such that the rest of my team is also playing to their strengths.
Very right.
And we're able to manage weaknesses.
And a very important aspect of this also comes in how do we constitute the team. So with this knowledge, with this understanding, having a team balance it becomes critical. So, each individual can actually bring in their strengths at different points of time. This is extremely of immense value, especially when you're working with project teams, all right? When people step in and make their unique contributions, all right? And one interesting factor I've seen in my coaching is that something that I play to my strength, all right, there's also an opposite weakness, which I really can't play to that, but there's someone else in the team who can really do that. Let's say if I'm a very creative person, and if I am, really coming up with bubbling ideas and stuff of that type, it could be a good chance that, I may not be too process-oriented, because maybe less structured. And that's really where someone else can step in, like the implementer steps in to support that role within the context of the team. All right. And when I have someone contribute to my KRAs, I feel terribly excited of the support system that is there within the group and the team. So I think we are now beginning to even not look at individual performers within the context of the whole organization. There's no doubt that individual performance is something that's important. But what's more important is how does the individual performance, synergize with the other performances within the group and the team, where Belbin comes in very strongly.
Okay, good stuff. So really looking at the individual and the team in a larger context.
Yes,
And before I get on to my next question, just want to check if there are any questions so far. I think everyone's saying hello to us. So hello to everybody too. Do type in any questions if you do have them. The next question really was also looking at where have been your aha moments in coaching?
Okay.
Using the tools. When have the aha moments really come about?
You see, Pearl, typically when I get into a coaching exercise, I really like to talk to people, and the coachee in advance, get insights from others who are sort of stakeholders to the entire process. Quite often, organizations have also institutionalized a sort of a 360-degree program where you also get inputs from there. And by and large, it's been my experience that there is some degree of defensiveness to the inputs that come in.
When you get a
or possibly a 360-degree report. Not always, sometimes. And so there are these blind spots, which do exist. Now, I don't agonize about that, or don't try to get the person to look into the rationale or the reason for that. That's where the tools pan out, And through a whole process of inquiry, you're able to sort of help the person to have a self-realization and say, aha, in fact, that comment that was made was really true. For example, if someone has got a feedback that says, very inflexible, sticks to his point of view, and reluctant to change his stand, the participant sort of says, hey, that's not me, Now, what's very interesting is that when you get into discussing the profiles, or you're discussing the MBTI or the Belbin team goals, somewhere down the line, there's a manifestation that comes through to the person. Because now he himself is giving an input into that process, And suddenly you begin to see that, here is a person whose possible preference is, let's say, INTJ, And so whilst he is forward-looking, while he's very analytical, while he's very sure about himself, his last preferred function, is actually sensing, which really means that he could have moved on and jumped on to those very strong beliefs and conclusions he's arrived at without really taking certain critical facts and information. Now, that is something he'll be able to see that, and that's the reason why my subordinates or my team members feel I'm rigid. Because a very interesting case, for example, aha moment is when you ask a person with this profile, for example. So when you read a note, possibly, how do you tend to sort of read the whole thing, And most typically, you say, I read the first 3 lines in the center and the last. And I need to get on to something, and I've got the whole thing right there. But inside, there's a lot of data and a lot of information which possibly I have missed out. And so when you're dialoguing with your subordinate and you're conscious that you could have missed out on these details, then you're able to be patient. Then you're ready to listen now. There's possibly something
because else. You know now that this is something that I tend to not
Absolutely.
I tend to miss. And I think from a coach's perspective, I think, and I'm also getting a signal over here that says, I think that there are 2 questions that have come up, which we will get to the questions. But I think from a coach's perspective, therefore, tools like this very importantly help individuals then be open to feedback.
Absolutely.
That normally then comes from reporting managers or people.
Very right.
Number one, the MBTI is helping you understand internally what's happening.
Yeah.
The Belbin, for example, is one that is extremely strength-based. So I do know, because when I use the Belbin, because the language is all team roles are good, you're getting into the space of saying, okay, how do I leverage my strengths and how do I manage my weaknesses?
Absolutely.
So really getting people opening up to really saying, okay, what is the data that is now available? How can I even look at feedback that's coming from others in order to move up in my leadership journey?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like when I get my profile on the Belbin, for example, and I see it, okay, there's the 3 natural roles, 3 manageable roles which I can play, and the 3 roles which, I should possibly avoid. Those are what we call the least preferred roles. This becomes very important and valuable data, because typically as a leader in a workplace, I think because my job demands a particular approach towards doing it, I think I need to play all the 19 roles, all right? And this is where I need to understand, why am I given a team? Is so that I can, like for example, Pearl, my least preferred team role is a monetary evaluator, all right? Now, if I have got to objectively analyze information, data, and stuff of that type, I can possibly do it, but at a great expense of my time and my draining of my energies. And when I'm under stress, then what really happens is I can over-analyze that. Because in some way or the other, the monetary evaluator has a strong thinking role. All right. And if I now try to correlate in some way with my MBTI profile, I know that thinking is my least preferred role. I can now understand where the stress is coming from.
I think it's beautiful how this really helps you understand yourself better, and the way the tools complement. I think we're just going to check and see what are the questions that have come up right now. So there is a question by Mukesh. Mukesh Kuri says, the book written by Paul Hearsay, The Situational Leader. What are your thoughts on the concept of situational leadership, and how is the approach different? I'm going to let Leslie take this question, because this has to be one of our favorite questions that comes up.
It's really a good question, You see, ultimately, leadership is all about being able to motivate your people, right? And to sort of trigger off those emotions that make a person contribute, right? And as Paul Hershey says, Blanchard as well, in this whole situational leadership model, beautifully sort of helps us diagnose, all right, the people with whom we work, all right? And so if as a leader, I need to have something going on, I need to understand at what level of development in that context of the task my person is, my subordinate is. Is he at D1, D2, D3, D4 level? Right. Now, having an understanding of that, because D1 level would mean the guy is highly committed, all right, competence is low. So what's the approach that I would use? So he talks about the directive approach. He talks about the coaching, the supportive, and the delegating. All right. So these are the 4. Now, I think this is a good way for a leader to be emotive. It's a good way to inspire. And most important, if you use the wrong approach for the wrong situation, you have a problem. Instead of motivating, you demotivate.
And if I can add in something over here, Mukesh, I think it's really interesting, because taking from what Leslie just said, our aim is really to motivate individuals that we are working with. I think the tools like the MBTI, the Belbin, help us understand the person. So where the person is coming from. What are the person's team role strengths. What are the person's preferences. And something like the situational leadership helps us understand the situation and helps us understand the task. And therefore, from a leader's perspective, that's great knowledge to kind of keep in mind to say, okay, what is my approach to really help this person in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So it's definitely, Pearl, my belief is that all this research that is done, complements, supports, all right, one another, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Mukesh's comment over there. He says, how is the approach different from the MBTI? I think that I hope that kind of explained it a little bit in terms of the situational leadership, talking about the situation per se. And I'm guessing you can use your MBTI knowledge, of the person to really help the person in that particular situation. So it really complements each other really well.
Now, for example, a little more clarification on that part. All right. So if I have a subordinate, who may be, let's say, on a D3 level, all right. So he's highly competent, but he's not motivated.
Yeah.
All right. He doesn't contribute. There's something to do. All right. Yeah. So what's really going to be important over here is the whole feeling space, which I need to tap into. All right. Now,
nice.
So if my MBTI profile, if I understand that well, I am now going to leverage that understanding.
Nice.
All right. To be able to fulfill. It's an obligation to him. And if I know, if possibly, I tend to be critical. Or if because of my absolutely. So if my dominant MBTI mental process is thinking rather than feeling, I'm now more conscious of the fact that this is a guy now where now logic is not going to play a role. Being objective and analytical and trying to justify something,
you need to appeal
to the emotive side of this person, and that's where I sort of leverage this.
Right.
And very often, the Belbin team rules also then come to my aid to support the approach.
And to know what is your fantastic. To know what is the team rules playing over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we've got another question. Thank you, Mukesh. Mukesh says thank you. And Madhuri has messaged and saying, how is the other assessment tools, such as DISC? So DISC differ from the MBTI. Okay, so how does the DISC differ from the MBTI? Should I take that? So with regards to, of course, with regards to the DISC also, the MBTI, of course, is the personality tool, and it's the most widely used personality tool. And as I said earlier, our personality is really our mental process, what's happening within, how do we make decisions, how do we get in our energy, how we relate into the outer world. And then you have your behavior that then comes in. Personality also affects, or personality is a very important component that influences our behavior. I believe the DISC helps you really understand how do you behave, what is it that other people can see.
Absolutely.
And that's really the difference that's really coming in and helping you really.
And they can be used to support each other.
Of course.
Right,
and we've seen this so often, even when we do the Belbin accreditation, because of course, people will come in who would have done the DISC, they would have done the MBTI, they would have done the Strength Finder, and every time they will say, we normally ask at the beginning, we'll say, what are the questions that you kind of want to have answered at the end of the accreditation? And more often than not, there's always a question that says, do these tools relate to one another? And is there some coherence?
Which is better than the other.
Which is better than the other. And by the end of it, you will realize that all of these tools
have their unique,
really help. They complement one another to really help, I think, us help leaders, help individuals enhance. At the end of the day, I really think it is about enhancing effectiveness. Really about seeing what is the best. How can we get the best of ourselves, and how can we get the best of others?
And what you're most comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? I think we have just a few more minutes before the time frame for the webinar ends. If there are any other questions, otherwise we'll probably have closing thoughts. Yeah. Okay, good stuff. I think what we've really done is
a big thank you
okay,
to all of you for being here as well, and for the questions that were asked.
Yes, thank you very much, Mukesh, Madhuri, writing in, everyone who's also been part of the session. I think we were really able to hopefully look at leadership from the perspective of leading self, leading others, looking at, of course, MBTI and the Belbin, and how these tools and how tools really can help us better understand,
discover ourselves as well.
Discover ourselves and discover our teams. With that, if there are, of course, any queries, any further thoughts, ideas that you may want to kind of look at for the next webinar, do mail us. We'd absolutely love to hear from you. Do send us a mail at info@prepearl.net. And before we leave, to just let you know, the PrePearl 2017 calendar is out. Therefore, we do have the upcoming events. The big open events that you're going to be looking at is the masterclass, which is a one-day session that's happening in Delhi on the 14th of February and in Mumbai on the 23rd of February. A great way to get a first-hand knowledge and a first-hand appreciation of the Belbin and how you can actually use it back at your workplace. The first accreditation, which is of course the Belbin UK certification, is happening on the 23rd and the 24th of March in Mumbai. Registrations for both the masterclass and the accreditation are on, so you may want to check that out. Details are available on the PrePearl website, and you will also, I'm guessing, would have received or will definitely receive a few details from us. With that,
a very big thank you to all of you for joining in.
Thank you for joining in. Have a great evening. And before we sign off, the festive season's here, so a very Merry Christmas.
And a wonderful New Year 2017 to all of you.
Yes, we will see you in 2017. Join us at the next webinar. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Have a very good evening ahead.